Maria, thank you so much for joining me in the LSI studio today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing at Samay.
The company was inspired by personal tragedy. This is a prototype. It's called Sylvie after my grandmother. I lost her to COPD exacerbation that was misdiagnosed a couple of years ago. And what we are building, it's an AI-enabled management platform for respiratory health anywhere.
How does it work?
How does it work? So we have this a prototype device. We are using active acoustic sensors. So what it means is that we are placing this prototype on somebody's chest, right?
Wow.
Right? And we are sending signals from one end, right here, the speaker, and on the other end, we are listening to that sound that's transmitted through the chest, and we are catching resonances. The main principle of the idea is that when you have lungs that are functioning okay, it has a particular resonance profile, and when the lungs are declining, we can catch those changes. The main thing that we're trying to do is to improve pulmonary function when you are outside of the hospital. So by using a wearable all the time, we can know that without asking patients to blow through devices, which is one of the main reasons why we are losing people to COPD or asthma or long COVID.
Yeah, it's my understanding that there are millions of patients that have asthma and COPD together.
Yeah.
And the main cost and risk to them is when they have an exacerbation.
Yes. COPDers, right, just in the US. So 30 million Americans have COPD. Half of them are not diagnosed. 26 million are affected with asthma, and about 18 million have long COVID. The main issue with COPD specifically, and let's talk about them, is like 50% of them exacerbate every year at least once. And every exacerbation costs $28,000, just one single event. You go to the hospital, sometimes you're admitted to the ICU, it costs a lot of money. So the main thing is we're trying to replicate what other companies in digital health have already done. So they use wearable sensors, anything sensor-ish at home that can figure out continuously, remotely, and easily how your organs are doing, right? So you have a rhythm for cardiac stuff. You have continuous glucose monitoring for diabetes. By the way, I'm a user, and I love it. I love the whole experience. So that's what we're trying to replicate with Samay, right? So can we figure out, you as a COPD patient, your lungs are doing okay? Can we pick up signals that are showing us some sort of decline of the function of the lungs? So not symptoms, it's not cough or wheezing or anything like that. Actual function, meaning air coming in and out the right way, how is expected. And then we can enable care coordination with the actual providers. It could be either us or an actual pulmonary clinic that is taking care of these patients. So the full exacerbation is scalable in a way that it's treated early at home, and we can prevent those costly hospitalizations and eventually even mortality or death. So the story is, I always say, I'm trying to solve the problem that killed my grandmother. So my abuela, when she died, was because she wasn't very good at telling us she was declining. And when we picked up, the signs were obviously too late. She got into the hospital and she died from complications from an ICU admission. So the whole thing could have been prevented.
First, lo siento mucho por tu abuela.
Gracias.
It's tragic to lose someone to something that could have been prevented. However, you're using that personal motivation to now offer hope to millions of other patients in the world, which is incredible. You mentioned if you catch it early, you can monitor and intervene. How early do you believe your technology will be able to identify these signs of an exacerbation coming?
Sure. So I've talked to a lot of people, right? Like over 200, 250 people in the respiratory space. So in order for us to actually be commercially adopted, just a matter of 36 hours, it's the cutoff. But the thing is, again, I go back to predicates, right? Historical precedent. Other companies have demonstrated that by digitizing biomarkers, you could even do it probably 5 to 7 days prior to the exacerbation when it's diagnosed itself. So again, I mean, if we are able to do it at 36 hours, that's more than enough for actual companies or doctors or to actually, buy it or start using it. So one of the main objectives within the next 24 months is to actually run an exacerbation trial with a prototype that's robust enough and a platform that's robust enough and can catch the signals 24/7 for several days. We still need to work a lot on the engineering part of it, and ideally to see if we are able to see those signals that are different and how that turns into like exacerbation, how it's diagnosed, if the doctors realize as an actual true exacerbation, and how we can prevent a hospitalization event. So it's a long way.
Yeah.
Everything in medical technology takes
Takes a
forever.
while.
But that's a goal. And yeah, I mean, I love the fact that it's challenging, but it's so important that we don't steer away from things that are difficult.
Absolutely. You have to address those challenges.
Yes.
So maybe speaking about those challenges, you mentioned that there are other competitors, other products out there today. What are sort of the limitations of those technologies, and how are you distinguishing yourself and improving upon, I imagine, what they're doing already?
Sure. So there are a few things here. So the status quo, the standard of care today, I think that we are fighting against or competing against literally are questionnaires. So questionnaires. So for example, in COPD, you have something that's called the CAT assessment. It's a list of 10 questions, and you score each question from 0 to 5. That's what killed my grandma, right? We have subjective data, questionnaires to diagnose exacerbations. That's how we figure out if you are exacerbating. And those questionnaires are missing 50% of the exacerbations. So half of exacerbations are never diagnosed. That's why it's so costly and people are dying so much. And then there are a few other things. So then the patients realized, I want to know numbers. Somehow I want to figure out, they call it, I want to know my numbers. They have pulse oximeters. So doctors, we don't really like pulse oximeters, but they don't tell us anything about the lung. It's a lagging indicator of a problem. And when you hit a number, which is 88, this person has to come to the ER, or we need to do something like 911 right away. So patients do pulse oximetry, and as I was saying, it doesn't tell you much about the lung. So doctors, we don't really make a lot of clinical decisions based on that number. And then the gold standard, what we've been using for 70 years, is a spirometry. What it is it's a device that you have, and you blow through it for 10 seconds, and you get a lot of numbers. The problem with a spirometry is that because you have to do a forceful maneuver, patients really dislike doing it because their lungs are not okay. Their lung function is reduced to like 70, 50%. So they are so scared of exacerbating symptoms that they just don't do that. And doing the whole maneuver, it's hard. So reproducibility, it's a problem. So when you talk to pharmaceutical industry companies, right, they always told us, well, Maria, the thing is like, yeah, we have a spirometry for our clinical trials, but the reproducibility is so poor that we are looking for sensors. And right now, there are a lot of startups doing digital stethoscopes. So they just listen. We are not a digital stethoscope. They just listen to the sounds that are coming from the lungs. And in medicine, I mean, we don't really use a stethoscope anymore, not really, or at least doctors, we don't use them, because we know there are better technologies, right? I mean, just listening to the sounds, even if it's digital, the diagnostic sensitivity is only 40%. So when you have COPD or asthma or many of these respiratory conditions, sometimes baseline-wise, you have abnormal sounds, but it doesn't mean that you're exacerbating. So it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's abnormal. But then what happens is that you need to say or take this patient to do another test. So it doesn't really move the needle. We don't really use stethoscopes. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, it makes sense, right? You can only tell so much from a sound.
Exactly.
So you guys are not just listening to sounds, you're using artificial intelligence to decode what that information means. Are you training it internally based off of data that you're collecting, or is there a larger data set? How are you making your AI smart?
Let's talk about AI. Sorry, I'm so geeky.
No.
I love it. And I'm not an expert on AI, but it's so interesting. So the main challenge that we have as a company, and I sometimes say this looks more as a science project than a company itself, at least not right now. Nobody has ever tried acoustic resonance to figure out the lung, ever before. So that's good and bad. Good because we had already secured 6 patents, and that's great, right? Because we have, an area that we can protect. But since nobody has ever done it before, we need to build a database. So right now we are testing a lot of people, 6 to 8 patients every single week in one of our sites in Florida. And we are starting to test probably 60 to 100 people more in California. So our goal is to have at least data from 150 to 200 by the end of this year. And even though it's not like 1,000 people to treat, because, train models, you need 5,000 people. I mean, ideally. We have so much data per patient. We have 2.5 hours of data from each patient, and that's what it's, exciting, but also it's taking long, because crunching the numbers takes forever. Sure. But I mean, we think that by the end of December of this year, actually, we could probably have very meaningful results, and I'm excited.
I'm excited to hear more about it too when the results come in. Maybe shifting gears a little bit here, do the acoustic biomarkers that you're collecting, are they the same for chronic respiratory patients across the different disease states? So asthma, you're looking at the same biomarkers as you are in COPD?
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's very pathophysiological, the question. Sure. So we know by science that, it's so interesting. We call it phenotypes. So even amongst the same type of disease, there are small groups that behave differently. So I don't think, we have already seen the data that COPDers behave certain way and they cluster here. Asthmatics do something here. And long COVID, oh my gosh, they are all over the place. Right. So, because long COVID, we don't know anything about long COVID, right? It's like new. But that opens up another door for research and development, anything, drug development, therapeutics. I'm super excited because even though we don't know, in the next couple of years, the next decade, we can potentiate all things research with our technology. So right now what we are seeing is that COPDers behave in a very particular way. So the acoustic resonance profiles are different from the others. So that's one thing that I can tell you today for sure. Okay. That's what we are saying.
So then are you focusing right now only on COPD, or are you working on training your AI on multiple different disease states?
I would love to say that we are doing a lot of things, but as a company, you need to be very focused, right? If I had the money, I will do asthma and long COVID and COPD just because of the need and medical hat on. But right now we are focusing on COPD because there are a lot of competitors doing COPD. The clinical need and economic need, it's obviously higher. And again, I have my own personal bias, right? My abuela died from COPD. I really want to fix this problem. But in the future, definitely asthma and long COVID, we are, contemplating doing contracts or grants for asthma, DOD, NIH, or a few other things. But again, you're right. Laser focus.
That's good. Speaking of money, are you guys currently raising money right now?
No, really. I came because I'm a first-time founder and I've never raised before, for real, going out fundraising. So I thought this was a really interesting conference. A lot of my friends were coming, so I was like, okay, let's go and like see people after the pandemic.
Right.
Finally, opportunity to dress up. But yeah, no, great. So I wanted to like test the waters and myself on the stage. I was so nervous. Oh my goodness. But in a way, I wanted to like see how I do it. I wanted to test myself as a CEO. Do people like it? Like, A/B testing in a way. People like the energy. Do people like? I needed to validate the company, right? So we are not fundraising, but I'm open to have conversations and especially feedback. I need to learn a lot, and I need to know what is it that moves the needle for investors to say, I want to join this team. I want to help Maria solve this problem. And yeah, I mean, I'm here to learn.
It's great that you have such an open mind.
Yeah.
Having a humble attitude when you're speaking with investors is really important to pull in the feedback you need to, make your mission a reality.
Yep.
As a first-time founder, do you have any advice for other first-time founders that are out there?
Oh my goodness. So many things. You can email me. I think what you were saying, be open to feedback or criticism, however you want to frame it. Don't fall in love with the technology, right? You are going to pivot for certain at least 3-4 times. We were originally going to spin out technology from UC Berkeley, where everything started when I was doing my master's there. So be open to what's your actual mission? Do you really want to solve a problem? And if you are, you should be able to modify a lot of things, and especially to listen to a lot of feedback and a lot of suggestions. At the end, you decide what you're going to do or not, decide if that's a good advice or not. I'm going to follow through. But especially that, because people, or at least in Silicon Valley where I live, I've never experienced that type of community or environment where people literally for free help you with advice. And I'm so privileged to be there and have access to that people because I'm from Colombia, right? So I'm from a developing country. I don't speak perfect English. I have an accent, right? And it was even worse before. And again, I mean, how many people from a Latin American country has the opportunity to be right at the mecca of everything technology, right? So I'm so thankful for the opportunity, so that I ask for a lot of questions, I ask for a lot of help, and I'm getting it for free, and I love that, right? So I would say that, and asking for help. People think that when you're a CEO, you're supposed to be perfect, you're supposed to get everything right. Investors are not really looking for the people who have the right answers, but the right attitude to say, if a door closes, I'm gonna find a back door.
Yeah.
And I do that very often. But still, I'm so different from the successful founder, the profile that they are looking for, usually a male, usually somebody who is, white, who speaks perfect English. I look so different. So historically, there hasn't been somebody like me who has taken a company IPO, and even less in medical technology, right? So I'm a high-risk founder, right? I have a high-risk profile. So trying not to fight it, do not fight it, find a way to get it done. So that's why I do a lot of grants too. That's why I'm talking to a lot of funds that in a way have some sort of signal or story that in a way I feel connected to, the challenges, the personal stories, right? I do a lot of things because of my family, right? So that's how you do it. Yeah, and just keep persevering. I mean, this is gonna take forever.
The adversity will make the final reaching the finish line that much more rewarding.
Yeah.
Maria, you are such a vibrant and driven person. I know that you're bound for great things, and I can't wait to see where you and your company go in the future. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Yes, thank you for inviting us. Thanks so much.